Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ellis Nordhoff, and today I'm joined by Lewis from Besotted to do the opposition view on Everton versus Brentford this weekend. How are you, Lewis?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Ellis. And thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. So, huge game for both clubs, I think, this on Saturday, 5:30 kickoff. Everyone will be watching it on Sky, and I think it'll generate quite a lot of interest, this game, because two teams who are in very different positions at the minute. You guys are pretty stable. We're struggling, winless at the moment, so we really need this win. But I feel like you guys need it as well to just kickstart that season, because looking at the season so far, you've won one game, you drew three and lost one, so pretty average start. But do you need that win now to really push forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when we looked at the fixture list, I think the opening four games looked relatively straightforward. I mean, I think Spurs would normally be a game that we'd be quite apprehensive about, but because they'd just lost Harry Kane, I think it's literally the day before the game, we were eventually a bit disappointed with just a point there. And we haven't won at home yet, so we've drawn all three of our home games, which is a bit disappointing, really. We should have picked up more points so far. But you're right. I think, we had a setback up at St James's Park at the weekend when we lost narrowly 1-0. We need to try and come away with 3 points on Saturday. No doubt about that.
Yeah, that Newcastle game was a difficult one for you guys because, of course, losing it to a penalty, which was a dubious one, to say the least, as well. Our former player, Anthony Gordon, going down there, and there was a lot of debate about it, and your manager, Thomas Frank, was really not impressed. Do you think from that game you deserved a bit more than losing?
Yeah, I think we should have come away with a point. That probably would have been a fair result. There weren't that many clear-cut chances on either side. I mean, I agree. I think the penalty was a bit iffy. But there again, they had a goal disallowed, which other games might have been given. There was another penalty shout for a handball against Brian and Mbeumo, which again looked borderline. I think all three decisions were difficult ones. So I suppose law of averages says you're probably going to get one against you. But yeah, we had the better of the first half. They were the better side in the second, and I think the goal looked like it was coming, to be honest. But yeah, a point would have been a fair result, I think.
It's disappointing to lose when it's close margins like that with a decision. But of course, Newcastle are a strong side who we expect to be fighting for top four again, potentially. And we know they're a good team. And you look at the Everton game that you've got on Saturday, that's more likely to be one that you'd look at and go, that is a game that we need to win if we really want to be competing for Europe this year. Of course, last season was fantastic for you guys, and you seem to just get better and better since you've been promoted. And the work that's done behind the scenes at the club is just wonderful, really. And looking at you guys this season, I think you've got to make that step, that progress, without, you don't want to stay too much the same. I've heard Thomas Frank discussing this week on Monday Night Football about how you need to adapt if you want to move to the next level. And of course, we're going to see a different Brentford this season because of the loss of Ivan Toney for half of it. But what is different about the Brentford that we're going to be facing on Saturday compared to the one that we faced last season?
Well, I think you've just put your finger on it to some extent. We've had to reinvent ourselves to some extent without Ivan Toney. And I think what we've seen so far this season is more of the ball being kept on the ground, more kind of dynamism up front, whether we're playing two up there or three. There's more kind of interchanging of positions. We've got three. We'll probably go with three up front, I think, against you guys on Saturday. They're all quick. They're all pacey. We haven't got anyone who can hold the ball up as well as Ivan Toney can. And arguably, he's the best finisher that we've got. He probably is the best finisher at the club. So I'm not saying that he doesn't leave a hole there, but I think we've adapted really well. We're playing better football than ever before and creating lots of chances. So that's one side of it. I think where we're going to be weaker, without a doubt, is at left back, where Rico Henry, who's been one of our best players for the last couple of years, I think is the best left back in the country, and I cannot understand why he doesn't get picked for England. It's just bizarre. but he ruptured his ACL against Newcastle, and that's going to mean we lose a lot of pace. We lose a fantastic defender and also someone who can really bomb forward as well. And we're going to have to probably juggle the team around. So I think that Hickey, who's been establishing really well at right back, is going to have to move across to left back. So there's going to be not just the fact we haven't got the pace that Rico offers, but also we're going to have to juggle the shape of the team around a little bit. So I think, well, I know that the fans are really quite nervous. I mean, we're all gutted for Rico and, wish him a speedy recovery. But we're also really worried about the impact that's going to have on our side because he's just been so important to the way that we play.
He's been so impressive every time I've seen him play for you guys, and he really does not get enough media attention. Like you say, perhaps not the best in England, maybe, but I certainly think he's a top left back, and he's a player that I'd love to have in our team. And to miss out on him now, it's up to Thomas Frank to adapt, but who better to adapt than Thomas Frank, who is the best at that? Look at what you've done already with adapting to the loss of Ivan Toney. I watched you against Tottenham and against Fulham, and to see the way that you were playing without your talisman, it was as if players had kind of stepped up to the plate themselves, the likes of Mbeumo, the likes of Wissa, who've gone and took the mantle on themselves and gone, we've not got Toney, but we're still Brentford. We're not a one-man team, because that is not what Brentford are. You're not a one-man team.
No, that's exactly right. And I think you've again pinpointed the two players that I really agree have kind of stepped up this season, particularly Wissa, whose goal record is fantastic, actually. If you take the penalties out of the equation, which obviously Toney was really, really good at, his goals per minute record is actually better than Toney's, even before this season. So, wow. But he's kind of looking stronger. He's trying to hold the ball up in the same kind of way that Toney does. He looks as though he's got better in the air as well. So it's almost like they're trying to replicate some of the aspects that we've lost with Toney in Wissa. So yeah, he's going to be a threat for you guys, and he's beginning to combine really well now with Brian Mbeumo, who is another of our most important players. He's up there with Rico Henry in terms of being really, really important to the way that we play.
So is it a case of like the sum of the parts really in replacing Toney? Because of course you've got Kevin Sade who's involved as well, and Wissa and Mbeumo are really stepping up to the plate. But is it basically that those players have to do the job of Ivan Toney, and they seem to be doing it really well at the minute? Where does Sade come into this?
Well, he tends to play at the moment in home games when we're playing a three up front. So we'll probably go 4-3-3, I think, for the game on Saturday, whereas we had 3 or 5 at the back and therefore 2 up front for the Newcastle game. So I think what we'll see is the centre-back dropping out and Sade will come in on the left. And as you'll know from having seen glimpses of him, he's really, really quick. Yeah. Still a little bit random. So I wouldn't trust him in front of goal. And some of his decision making is a bit it's like the decision making of someone in a real hurry,
Is he quite raw? Yeah.
Yeah, very raw. He's young. He's got massive potential, but he's very, very inexperienced. I know he's gone straight into the German national side, more as a squad player than a starter, but they've obviously spotted his potential as Brentford did. And but with him, he's got a lot to learn. But what he will do is terrify defenders because of his pace. He's also very useful in the air. He's got a big leap. He's not the biggest, but like Ivan Toney, he can jump very high and cause some problems in that area as well.
You're striking a lot of fear into me here, because you've talked about the front three and you've waxed lyrical about all of them, and our defence has struggled quite a lot this year. One of the away games, the Aston Villa game, we were thrashed by them, and they really did just ruin us with their pace. And I am worried about the prospect of going to the G-Tech Community Stadium on Saturday, and I am going down there myself, and I'm just hoping that I can see an away victory, because we really need the win. We're currently winless, of course, and that first win is so crucial to getting your season up and running. And last week, of course, we played Arsenal, who a top side and a team that you don't expect to beat, but
Yeah.
the performance wasn't ideal, really. We didn't really lay a glove on them, but it's up to the players now to give us a real reaction against Brentford. And I think that the only way that we really get through you guys is from being really good on transition. And I think we have to sit in because, like you say, you're going to go 4-3-3. You're going to be bold against us because why wouldn't you? Your home record's fantastic. But I'm slightly nervous about this game. And probably if we'd won already, I would take a point. But we need this win. What are you thinking about Everton as a prospect? And are there anything that you're worried about, even though that you are on paper a much superior side at the moment?
I think your manager is his record speaks for itself. Not necessarily at Everton yet, but he did an amazing job at Burnley with no resources, and I know that Everton are strapped for cash. So I always fear playing against a Sean Dyche side because he gets the best out of whatever resources he's got, and he's clever tactically. I think he will not just make it difficult, but I think he'll want to turn it into quite a physical game.
Yeah,
and without Tony, without Rico Henry, we're perhaps not as physically strong as we were last season. That was a real aspect of Brentford. We're not as strong so far on set pieces.
Right.
And I can see you guys causing us some issues around set pieces. I mean, you've got some good quality players. I've learned to respect how good Pickford is. I know
he's fantastic.
He comes across a bit of a madman, but he can pull off some extraordinary saves. Calvert-Lewin, I think if you get 90 minutes or something approaching that out of him, then he's going to be a big threat against us. And an old Brentford player, Tarkowski, who, I got a lot of respect for him. He's a really decent player, I think. But I was having a look at your side against Arsenal last night and was thinking it's probably, it's one of the weaker looking lineups that I've seen from Everton in the last few years. I don't know if that's fair. I always thought Damari Gray was a very good player, and I know he's moved on now. So yeah, I mean it's and Gordon as well. He caused us a lot of problems against Newcastle last week, and we struggled against Gordon when we played against you in recent times. So
he scored, didn't he, at the G-Tech last year?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm hoping that I've read that right, and you're perhaps a bit weaker than usual. But any Sean Dyche side is going to be a challenge to get anything against.
I think weaker in a sense that, of course, we've had players injured, and now the thing is that we're looking closer and closer to our strongest team. And I think by Saturday we'll pretty much have everybody back. We're maybe missing one or two. Jack Harrison may be available at this point, and it's now the time where there's no injury excuses anymore, really, once this team goes out. And we have got two strikers now as well. We've got Beto as well, who is quite similar to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I'm not sure yet which one will start. I think it'll be Beto, but we're yet to be seen on that. I think the team is weaker in a sense that it's not performing at the moment, but on paper, that team shouldn't be in a relegation battle, I don't think. And the midfield has struggled recently, so I'm quite worried about your midfield against ours. I quite like Matthias Jensen for you. And our midfield, everybody looks at it on paper and goes, that's a fantastic midfield, but they've been struggling together recently. I think they need a ball player to really keep things calm in the middle, because at the minute, everything's quite erratic. The players are not sticking to the position that well. So I could potentially see James Garner come in on Saturday, and he may be able to allow us to have that breathing space and have a bit of time on the ball against you guys, because you're obviously going to win possession, but we can't be running around all day, because then you'll just tire us and wear us down. But I think I am worried about your midfield. Matthias Jensen, do you agree? Strong player.
He's been a transformation, I would say, really since Christian Eriksen joined the club, because he kind of effectively took Jensen's place, and I don't think anyone could have complained. Jensen had been obviously very talented, but very erratic, quite weak off the ball in particular. And he has just absolutely kind of come of age, really. And it's almost like he got what's the word, like jolted into having to up his game while but by the arrival of Ericsson. But when Ericsson moved on, it was like we had a ready-made replacement somehow. He's classy on the ball, great vision, good feet, and he's got a lot stronger as well, and just brings a lot more energy to his game. So he's often leading the press, Jensen, which he would never have done like 2 or 3 years ago. He was the most frustrating player in the squad. So yeah, he's become a consistent performer. And the other guy who's in there who tends to go under the radar is Christian Norgard, also Danish. He's been our player of the season pretty much consistently for the last 3 years. He's had a few injury situations, and he doesn't always get 90 minutes at the moment. So there is a feeling, and he missed a lot of pre-season. So there is a feeling he's not 100% fit, but he very much kind of holds the side together. But I can see a situation where, that we could get caught too many players forward, that kind of thing. You talked about transition, and that is potentially a concern for us, particularly without the pace of Rico Henry to come in and cover and shore things up a bit. So I could see that perhaps playing into your hands a bit as well.
Yeah, I'd be looking for the likes of Arnaut Danjuma, Dwight McNeil, maybe even Jack Harrison to really go for that left back spot. If it is Aaron Hickey playing out of position, that's obviously a weakness. And I'm not sure who you'd be playing at right back. Is it that Roeslev? Would you have?
Yeah, it'll be one of two. It'll either be Roeslev, another Danish player. We've got a lot of them, or Christopher Ayer, who's very different type of player, and I think more of a centre back than a full back. But again, I think we're expecting quite a physical game. He's a lot taller, stronger than Roeslev, and will offer a bit more defensively and on set pieces. And he once he gets going, he can be quite difficult to stop as an attacking player. But his positioning is, I would say, nowhere near as good as Roeslev. He's not as good on defending one-on-ones as Roeslev is. But I think there's no doubt that just because Henry's out, that back four looks a lot more vulnerable. And I'm sure that Dyche will have you guys testing us out on both the flanks there.
So that seems to be the way that we're going to get through you guys then, on the flanks, which we predominantly play on anyway, and with the weakness at fullback potentially even more. How do you think you're going to break through Everton? Because I'd say, looking at us, our weakness would be fullbacks at the moment. Our fullbacks have struggled to settle really this season. Of course, we've got Ashley Young, who's 38 years old now, who isn't quite what he was, but of course he's a leader and he does offer you something. Vitaly Mikolenko, who has had a spell out of the team, but he came back in against Arsenal and did really well. And then you've got young Nathan Patterson at right back, who is still learning, and he has got a lot to learn, but he offers promise as well. So for me, fullbacks is where you're going to get us. But from your side, what is it that Brentford have that's going to cut through Everton?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is going to be on the flanks, So while I said the players will interchange quite a lot, I think you can expect to see Schade fairly wide on the left, and Mbeumo, he'll come in off the right on his left foot, and both are quick, particularly Schade, as we were saying. So I think if he's up against, I presume he'd probably be up against Ashley Young. He could have some joy there. But again, we saw Young playing for Villa when I'd certainly assumed he was past it, and he still has got something. He's a clever player, and he's strong, and he's experienced, and so on. So, but I think us trying to get behind you is going to be the way that we're going to get some joy on Saturday. If we're playing in front of your back four, then I think we're not. You'll be well organised, and we're going to struggle to break through. So I think they'll push the ball out wide and let one of those two wide players have a run at your fullbacks.
Yeah, I agree. I think the ball's through as well, like through the lines between. If you get our defence chasing after a player, that's when you're really going to hit us then. And I can see
Yeah,
it now. The classic Mbuemo goal when he's cutting in on his left and he curls it into the far corner. That's the kind of thing. If I was to predict a goal that was going to be scored against us, it would be a through ball and Mbuemo left-footed into the far corner. So
yeah.
hopefully I've not just envisioned that, and then I'm looking really like psychic after the game, and I really hope.
Yeah, yeah.
But the main thing for me is the fact that you haven't got Ivan Toney this year, and regardless of how brilliantly you have coped with it, which you have, he is still such a key player. And he did an interview with the Diaries of a CEO, didn't he, a few months ago, which was
Yeah,
quite controversial actually. And he's coming back in January, I think. I think he's just returned to training, hasn't he?
he has.
It's a very interesting situation because he's linked himself with a bit of a move to Liverpool, Arsenal. What do you think of all that? And were you annoyed at Ivan Toney, or is it a case of he's done so much for your club that you'll kind of let him say what he wants at this point? And how important is it going to be to get him back for the second half of the season?
Yeah, I mean, the first question for, I mean, I think both. And, I was annoyed with that interview, but it wasn't a surprise. Uh, but he certainly did seem to be very clearly putting himself in the shop window.
He did.
But having said that, he's been such a big part of our success for the last 3 years, that you can't really begrudge him anything. But my sense is that he's moved on mentally now, and I think he wants to move to a bigger club. The talk is of Chelsea being prepared to pay possibly 80 million. Arsenal seem to be joining that race now. So I'd be very surprised if he stays beyond January. I really would. But considering we paid, I think it was about 5 million for him 3 years ago from Peterborough. It's a bit like Caicedo at Brighton. For a really small fee, we could make a massive profit. And I think that's what will happen in January. Whether that deal gets done before then or whether it gets done as soon as the window opens, I don't know. But I'd be surprised if he's there by the end of that window.
Right. So it's more of a case of preparing for life without him than expecting him to come back and see this Ivan Toney 2.0 that people are talking about.
I think so. It's possible he might stay until the end of the season. But I would be amazed if he's there at the start of next, So I think he's going to be heading off. But I think, we've had through circumstance, through necessity, we will have had a long time. We're at the end of last season and we'll have had up till January to get used to playing without him. And we've shown that we're not a one-man team. Newcastle was the first game we've lost since we've been playing without Ivan. So I think we're getting more and more able to do things differently without you seeing the whole kind of unit look worse because of his absence, if that makes sense. But he's a hell of a player, and he'll score a lot of goals for any team that creates a lot of chances, as both Chelsea and Arsenal will do. So I think he'll leave with everyone's blessing. Everyone will be, very grateful for what he's done for us. But I think he's got bigger and better things on his mind.
Yeah, I think from the interview that seemed to be the case, and there's no doubt that Brentford would spend that money properly, because if 80 million came into Brentford, you could buy 4 or 5 players with that. The way that
I think so. I think the only kind of problem is that the whole world will have seen that we've got 80 million quid to spend. You know what I mean? And I think that when you go shopping afterwards, I think, the prices get a bit inflated because they know that actually you've got some cash. So, but the club may wait until the summer to start reinvesting some of that, even if we get the money in January, because I think the feeling of the club is that you don't tend to get such good value in January. You're better to wait for the proper kind of close season, really. So we'll see what happens, and it could be that with Henry out for the season, which seems to be the case with his ACL, that if we do look to spend some money like immediately, then it might be on getting some higher quality left back cover in.
Yeah, that might make sense with such a terrible injury to him. And we all wish him all the best, of course. It's a horrific injury. It can ruin a player's career, really,
guys. So that's the worry.
It's a real shame. But going on to predictions now, it's time to make our decisions of what it's going to be for the game. I believe that we can get something, but I'm not massively optimistic about it because, of course, we haven't won yet. If I was to go with it, I would probably go with a 2-2 draw because I think it's unlikely that we keep a clean sheet against you guys because you are fantastic at home. But I'm just hoping that the attacking players can start to click now that they're all back fit. Hopefully a more fit Dwight McNeil, maybe a Jack Harrison featuring, hopefully Dominic Calvert-Lewin's further along as well with his mask on. And I'd love to see him scoring his mask because what a picture that'd be. But I think 2-2, and I'd probably come away with that in isolation saying it was a great result. But in context of the whole season, I would then be thinking we still haven't got that win, which is really worrying. What about you?
Well, funnily enough, I was on the Besotted podcast last night and I predicted 1-0. I think we'll just shade it. I think it's going to be a really difficult game, but I think we'll win by the odd goal and possibly 1-0, possibly 2-1. I think you might have some joy against our defence on Saturday, so maybe 2-1 is a better prediction, really. I do fear going a goal behind because I think you'll make life really difficult if you do get a really good foothold in the game. But I think, like yourselves, we really need to win this game, and I think we'll find a way to just get over the line. I think if we're able to bring on our new substitute, Neil Maupay, we might be able to do even better than that. But,
well, it's a shame that you're not able to
play, of course.
If he was coming on, we would be very worried because that'd be very Everton if our old player came and scored for you guys. It's an interesting one, that. What's your take on the Neil Maupay signing? Because at Everton, he was pretty much surplus to requirements, struggling quite a lot because probably was played in the wrong role a lot of the time. He isn't a sole striker, but no. I can see him going to Brentford in a really good structure and actually doing quite well in a place where he's loved as well. Yeah,
I think you put your finger on it there, Ellis. I think that he's still got a lot of affection from the fans. He scored 20 plus goals in a season, just looked really electric. And then kind of moved on to Brighton, did okay, I suppose, but didn't set the world alight, and then has really struggled every time I've seen him at Everton. I know you guys haven't been big fans of his, so I think he needs to feel valued and loved, and I think he'll get a big reception from the fans when he does first make an appearance. He came on for a few minutes against Newcastle, but we want to see him at home and really kind of give him a really good reception. And I think he'll probably come good. Whether he'll ever be a starter this season, I don't know. But with we had several attempts to bring in more of a traditional striker. We had a look at the likes of, we were after Brennan Johnson for many months and failed. We failed with one or two others. So I think it made sense on deadline day, when we heard about the news that he was coming back. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he's got anything to prove to our fans. We love the guy anyway. I think it's more proving probably to the rest of the football world that he's still got something to offer. Because I do sense that his career's not really kicked on in the way that I thought he might do, and that I'm sure he wanted to. So yeah, this could be the right move for him. I think we've got an option to buy at the end of the season, haven't we? Right. It's a loan with an option, I think. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, he's going to be a useful addition to our squad, no doubt about that, because we are thin on the ground.
I wish him all the best because it's just a situation where it hasn't worked out at Everton.
Yeah.
And we know that he's got ability, don't we? We know that he's actually quite a useful player in the link-up as well. He isn't just that standard number 9, is he? I think there's more to his game than that, which is probably wasn't what was used at Everton, which might be why it didn't go wrong. But I wish him all the best at Brentford. Before we go, I've got one final random question for you. It's every single time on this show we have to ask a random question at the end, and I'm asking you if you get to sit down with one former footballer of any kind, who would it be for a meal? You get to have a chat with them for hours on end. Who would that be?
Let's think. Possibly Ian Wright, just because I find him really. I imagine he'd be really good company. He comes across really well on the telly. He's quite irreverent. You'd probably get some decent kind of gossip about what happened and some of the antics that he definitely got up to in his career.
Definitely.
So yeah, he springs to mind, I think.
Interesting. That's a good one. Ian Wright was a great player as well, and now we've seen
he was
on television, even better person, isn't he?
Love him, absolutely love him.
Well, that completes our opposition view for Everton versus Brentford. Saturday, 5:30 kickoff. Going to be a very, very interesting game, and as we've spoken about, both sides really, really do need it. But that's all for now. Thank you very much, Lewis, for coming on.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me on, Ellis, and good luck to Everton after Saturday.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Hopefully we don't use your luck on Saturday, but we go and win, and then I hope that you guys have a great end to the season as well.
Thanks.
Check Lewis out on the Besotted podcast as well, but leave a like, subscribe, and that's all for now. See you in a bit.